I said, I didn't even say unreliable. I said that reliability had been questioned, and I said
No,
exactly
you also said that it was
why.
considered unreliable at the time.
Oh, I think it's absolutely unreliable now. It's, as I said, it's well out of date by now.
So why did you just criticize me for saying that you thought that it was unreliable? Well, you just admitted that it is unreliable.
No,
Doesn't
I
it really
think
make any sense?
unreliable now. I think
Considered unreliable at the time. That's what you said. Those are your exact words.
No, I mean, look what I put. I said accuracy problems with the WAIS.
You've said that. I know. It's not mutually exclusive. You've said that, and you've also said that it was considered unreliable at the time.
Where I'm looking in my transcript, trying to find in my transcript where I said it was considered unreliable at the time.
Yeah, so this is at 22 minutes and 24 seconds, but the test upper limit is 160, so it couldn't have been more than that. We've also seen that this test is way out of date and was already considered unreliable at the time he took the test, so you did say that.
Yes. So yeah, I will stand by that. I will stand by that. I do think it was
okay. So there wasn't really much of a point to this if you already stood by it. You already conceded to the fact that you thought it was considered unreliable at the time. Wait.
No. I mean, publish it in the journal. You're gonna have to challenge that paper because I think they proved.
Why would I have to challenge that paper to say that the WAIS III is valid?
Because you disagree with its conclusions.
Wait, do you think that just because you disagree with the conclusions of a particular paper that you have to do, I have to do a paper that is a negation to it? Why would I have to do that? Where's the burden for that?
No, I don't think you necessarily have to. But if you believe that their paper is in error, then
if I can deduce falsities within it or invalidities within it, then I can point them out and say that this is not a terribly great indication as to whether the WAIS III is valid or not.
Sure, but I mean, I'm going to have to see your data to demonstrate why their assessment was invalid.
Well, the proposition isn't about data. It's about how the data is used, right?
Yeah. Instead of an analogy, I would like to see you actually address the data that they presented.
Wait, hang on. That's a statistical. That would be a statistical addressing of it, not a logical one. In order for me to even have the capacity to give the statistical integrity or the logical integrity of the argument, I would have to actually analyze it logically. Because if it's not logically valid, there's no reason for me to go into the empirical side of it.
Okay, I think you're trying to logic your way away from testing data.
Well, again, that is not a logical rebuttal. We would have to go through the logical deduction of whether this standard is actually valid, and then we can go into the empirical side of it. Because if it's logically invalid, and then we go into the empirical side of it, then the empirical side of it is also devalidated. So we need to get through the logic.
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, I can hear you too. Great, wonderful. How are you, man?
There you go. That's good. Yeah, glad we could finally match up. I know we're probably in very different time zones, so it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not a problem for me today. I was free today, so it's convenient.
Yeah, I was lucky that I've got nearly nothing today except a couple of online classes later on this evening.
Great. So you wouldn't mind if I start with some things and see what your thoughts are on them?
Right ahead. Yep, you go right ahead.
All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about is you had a criticism of Chris's IQ test, the WAIS III test, as relating to the IQ ceilings. So I had a little bit of a problem with that because you made a criticism that was in relation to there not being a specific score, and that was what was invalidating it as not evidence of Chris Langan having a high IQ. So I just want to present this kind of argument. And
the lack of the score means that the lack of the score in the ceiling meant that he couldn't prove his specific claim to have a score of between 190 and 200 because firstly no score was given, and secondly that particular test only caps at 160. So it's very difficult to argue, I think, from that for the specific score of between 190 and 200. I don't see how he can extract.
Sure. Well, this is the problem that, firstly, that's not entirely relevant to the claim that Chris Langan has a high IQ, which is something that you've denied. You've said that this is not evidence of him having a high IQ. But also for that, even for the 190 to 210 IQ range, this could be the only possible evidence for it, right? Scoring above 160 or above the ceiling on a validated IQ test is quite the only possible kind of evidence that you could have for having an IQ in that range, right? Because if you take an IQ like the mega test, right, that's not going to be exactly indicative of a 100 to 90 to 210. But if you score above the ceiling on a WAIS III test or a WAIS IV or WAIS V test, that is a greater evidence for there having a possibility of a 190 to 210 IQ. Wouldn't you agree? Because you're scoring above the ceiling. So the reason that there's a ceiling is because there isn't a direct norm, a standardized norm to be able to give you a precise range.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I mean, yes, it's possible, as I believe I mentioned in my video, that this means he has at least 160 and arguably more. It's just not, firstly, it's not evidence for the specific range that he likes to quote. And secondly, I don't think the WAIS III, even at that time, was reliable enough to give him a score of 160. I just don't think that test, it had already been criticized so much, even by the time he had taken it. I mean,
really?
that's why the WAIS
okay. If you don't mind, I want to respond to this because this is another point of contention that I put your video into a transcript and I started going through it point by point. And this point really didn't make any sense to me because you said it had already been considered unreliable by the time. So, and right now you particularly said it was considered unreliable by the time that he took the test. So the time that he took the test was 1999. And the study that you cited that was the point of indication as to whether it is reliable or unreliable was produced in 2003. So it's quite literally historically impossible for it to have been considered unreliable at that time.
If you look at the study I quoted, it cites, and I think I mentioned this, it cites criticism of WAIS III of studies dating to the 80s. So that particular study was quoting studies which were published in the 80s criticizing WAIS III.
And this is another problem with the study, that because I read about this in the transcript. The studies didn't say that it was supporting it. It was never said, that was literally never said in the study. And we can pull it up right now if you want. It said that the results of these research that came out before the WAIS III even existed were consistent with the same conclusions that were reached in the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study. So there's a delineation between something supporting a particular conclusion and something being consistent with a particular conclusion, right? You can have a study in 1989 about the original WAIS test itself and it having the exact same conclusions and the exact same results than the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study did regarding the WAIS III test. But that doesn't mean that they're supportive of one another. It doesn't mean that the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study is supportive of the 1989 study, and it doesn't mean that the 1989 study is supportive of the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study, because it's just historically impossible. That's not what they're testing for. They're testing for the IQ measurement tools in each of these respective studies. They're different, right? The conclusions that are being reached, they're similar, they're consistent with one another. They say similar things, but they're not supportive of one another.
I don't think they need to be specifically supportive of each other in order to be critical of WAIS III.
Well, yeah, they do, because the WAIS III is a completely different exam than the original WAIS, right? Like, this just can't work.
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna have to bring up the study to see exactly what your objection here is. You're claiming that criticism of. Firstly, you said that the 2021 study or paper can't provide reasonable criticism of a paper of the WAIS III, because WAIS III was earlier than the paper.
No, WAIS III was later than the paper.
No.
So. Oh, no, wait, regarding the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study, is that what you're talking about?
I'm gonna have to look it up. Hang on, I'm gonna have to get the.
Okay, yeah. So let me just formalize my two claims so you understand exactly what I'm saying, so it doesn't get vague. Okay, so the first proposition is that the claim that you made that that the WAIS III test was considered unreliable at the time is quite literally historically impossible, because the study that you're using as a means to devalidate it was taken later than when Chris took the test, because that's what you said. You said it was unreliable at the time at which Chris took the test. Chris took the test in 1999. The Ryan and Schnuckenberg study that you're talking about came out in 2003. So it's not really a possibility that the means by which you're identifying, or the means of identification by which you say this is X is unreliable, right, can have been true at the time of Chris, because it's at a completely different time. It just didn't exist. X didn't exist at that time.
Okay, I'm gonna have to find the the monitor on which one of my monitors is down right now. The monitor, I've got a QLED monitor and it's just resetting at the moment, so I'm blind right now. I've just had to wait for this monitor reset. I can read my transcript. Because I think what I did was I said that the 1980s studies that this 2021 study cites. I wonder if I've got.
Yeah, but that's an equivocation. It doesn't really. That doesn't.
No, I don't think so. No, if I say here's a paper written in 2021 which says that in 1989 a test which was released in 1988 was being criticized, then that's not an anachronism.
It's a listen. This is the reason that it would be an equivocation. For example, if I say that there is a study talking about, let's say that we were in a high school paradigm here, and we were tracking throughout the years of high school, the 4 years, the validity or the scoring variability between different teachers for the exact same test, right? Or actually, the scoring variability for different tests in science, right, or in a physics class, right? It could totally be the case that in your freshman year, the study could say that the scoring variability was negative for the teachers, right? That there was a high level of scoring variability on the behalf of the teachers because of whatever scoring problems that there may be. It could also totally be the case that even in the sophomore year, it's the same. It could totally be the case that even in the junior and the senior years, it's the same. But that doesn't mean, right, that the freshman year one is indicative of the senior year one, or it's supportive of the senior year one, because the tests that are actually being tested, they're different, right? The conclusion here, right, or the means by which the conclusion in the freshman year is achieved cannot be supportive of the means by which, or the conclusion by which this senior one was achieved, because they're completely different tests.
Are you saying that the paper that I cited wasn't critiquing WAIS III?
The paper, no, that's not the proposition. The proposition is against the claim that you made that the test was considered unreliable at the time, at 1999.
Okay.
Because it wasn't. The reason, you know what? The reason that it wasn't, because it was accepted by pretty much every single high IQ society on the planet. It was used in judicial systems. It was used wide by almost every single neuropsychologist in the country, because it was the premier test. It was the newest, most reliable test at the time. It was even before the Ryan. This could make sense, possibly. It could be possibly logically intelligible if you said this. If Chris took the IQ test after the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study came out. But guess what? That's not when he took it.
Okay, I'm just going to find this. Okay. Here's what I said. Although WAIS III was introduced in 1997, which is before Chris took WAIS III, and yes, Chris did take WAIS III. I think we agree on that.
Yeah.
Accuracy problems with the WAIS itself had been identified as early as the 90s. The 80s, rather.
Yeah, so that's just not true. As again, I talked about the only indication to this is in your study, right? And the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study, there was earlier research done about other WAIS tests, right? But again, it's an equivocation to say that the means by which a conclusion was reached that is similar to that of the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study is supportive of that of the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study, or the conclusion of the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study. That's just not how it works, because they're different tests. There are different means of testing.
Wait a second. They said specifically because of the Wechsler scales. Their point was that yes, these criticisms, which were raised in 1982, 1983, and 1990, were still valid.
What was still valid?
If you want to, if their criticisms, the criticisms of raised by research in 1982, 1983, and 1990 of the Wechsler scales were still valid. That was their assertion.
Well, but you realize that the study itself is about scoring variability, right? You cannot have right, scoring variability in the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study and say, well, because there was scoring variability in the previous study in 1988 or whatever it may be, regarding a completely different test, that this is therefore supportive of the idea that that there is of the reason that there is scoring variability in the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study regarding WAIS III. That would be an equivocation.
I said accuracy problems with the WAIS itself. That is the WAIS scales, right? It does not. I did not say with the WAIS III specifically. I said with the WAIS itself. This whole system of measuring.
Right. Wait. So are you saying that all of the WAIS tests are in some capacity invalid because all IQ tests don't have exact validity?
I did not say this means the WAIS was. This proves the WAIS was reliable. I said accuracy problems with the WAIS itself had been identified as early as the 1980s. Then I cited the 2003 paper.
Yeah. Again, but the 2003 paper is not about. It's about scoring variability. That's the great contention of the paper. It's about scoring variability, right? That there is scoring variability between the people that are proctoring the tests, right? So they use two major groups. They use professionals and they use people that are postgraduates or something like that were studying. And you know what the problem with this is that they did the exact same study. They did the exact same test, and it had completely inverse results. And I have like an entire portion of this in the transcript that I've written regarding the problems with the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study, but I just wanted to keep it on the first part.
Okay, well, I think you're going. I think you're going to have to publish it. I think you're going to have to publish it.
I am
because I don't.
Wait.
No. I mean, publish it in the journal. You're going to have to challenge that paper because I think they proved.
Why would I have to challenge that paper to say that the WAIS III is valid?
Because you disagree with its conclusions.
Wait, do you think that just because you disagree with the conclusions of a particular paper that you have to do, I have to do a paper that is a negation to it? Why would I have to do that? Where's the burden for that?
No, I don't think you necessarily have to. But if you believe that their paper is in error, then
if I can deduce falsities within it or invalidities within it, then I can point them out and say that this is not a terribly great indication as to whether the WAIS III is valid or not.
Sure, but I mean, I'm going to have to see your data to demonstrate why their assessment was invalid.
Well, the proposition isn't about the data; it's about how the data is used, right? I wouldn't have to. I wouldn't have to give you. I wouldn't have to give you a counterfactual in order to prove that the study that you're using is not completely indicative of the WAIS III being false, or rather, it not being incredibly reliable. Not false. I'm correcting myself.
But I didn't claim the WAIS III was false.
I know. That's why I said I'm correcting myself. I was saying not false, unreliable.
I didn't even say unreliable. I said that reliability had been questioned, and I said
no. You also said that it was considered unreliable at the time. So, and you used the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study as a justification or reinforcement for that. So you did say that it was unreliable. Why would you? That's like such an easy thing to own up to. Why would you not own up to that? You do think it's unreliable.
Oh, I think it's absolutely unreliable now. It's, as I said, it's well out of date by now.
So why did you just criticize me for saying that you thought that it was unreliable? Well, you just admitted that it is unreliable.
No, I think it's unreliable now. I think at the time, reliability issues had been raised by it. I didn't say this.
You said it was considered unreliable at the time. That's what you said.
I said
considered unreliable at the time. That's what you said. Those are your exact words.
Okay,
and not just in the video, but in this call, you said that.
Let me see if I've got the. Okay, let me see the transcript.
Hang on.
I mean, it's indisputably considered unreliable now.
Okay, yeah, but this is what you said, that it was in this call you said it, and in the transcript you said it, that it was considered unreliable at the time. In this call you said that it was considered unreliable at the time of his testing. So, I don't understand why you just wouldn't know. It's not really even that big of a deal.
No, I mean, look what I put. I said accuracy problems with the WAIS.
You've said that. I know it's not mutually exclusive. You've said that, and you've also said that it was considered unreliable at the time.
Where I'm looking in my transcript, I'm trying to find in my transcript where I said it was considered unreliable at the time. I can't find at the time. I can't find the word unreliable.
I think I've got your transcript somewhere. Hang on.
Maybe I said it in the transcript ad lib rather than in the script.
No. Yeah, so this is at 22 minutes and 24 seconds. I'll just start from the beginning of the point of this timestamp. Don't even know what his exact score was, but the test upper limit is 160, so it couldn't have been more than that. We've also seen that this test is way out of date and was already considered unreliable at the time he took the test. So you did say that.
Yeah. Yes, I've got that at 22:34. Yeah.
22:34.
So yeah, I will. Yeah, I will stand by that. I will stand by that. I do think it was
okay. So there wasn't really much of a point to this if you already stood by it. You already conceded to the fact that you thought it was considered unreliable at the time.
Yeah, and I think I do. I mean, it had been already criticized significantly by that time.
It hadn't. By 1999, the WAIS III had already only come out for 2 years. It wasn't heavily criticized. It was used by almost every single neuropsychologist in the country. You know what? It is still to this day, 2025, accepted by Mensa. It is still to this day accepted by the 999 Society. These are the two most prominent, notable high IQ societies in the world. I think they would have the capacity to do their due diligence.
Yeah. Okay. You mean that they're using WAIS III and not WAIS V?
No. I'm saying that wait, that's not how it works. It's not how it works. You can have a pre-existing score, and Mensa would accept it, dependent on the validity of the test. So, for example, Mensa would not accept the mega test, right? But they would accept the WAIS III test taken. They would accept the WAIS III test, and the 999 Society would take would accept the WAIS III test if it was taken before 2015.
Okay. Fine. I'm not particularly concerned about Mensa though, as
well, that's the premier high IQ society in the world.
As a valid measure of. Well, I'm not particularly. I don't consider Mensa an organization which is a definitive judge on the reliability of intelligence tests. What they accept is their business, but they're not an organization which people turn to. This professionals turn to assess the validity of intelligence tests. Yeah. I mean, I can understand them saying, we'll accept that test that you took at that time. That's fine, but I don't think that necessarily proves that WAIS III was reliable then or is reliable now.
Well, if we had an organization that is trying to, for example, let's say we had an organization that, like the Delta Force, right, that tries to take the best, absolute best of the people, the absolute best soldiers from the Green Berets, from the Ranger Battalion, from the Navy SEALs, and we would say, if this organization, the entire creation of it is for there to be Special Operations Forces people, the best of them, to go to these to go to this particular unit, to go to this particular part or organization of the military that only takes the elite of the elite. Isn't this some kind of an indication that if somebody is from Delta Force, that they're probably a very elite person, that they wouldn't just accept any retard? My bad. I mean, they wouldn't just accept any idiot from from the regular infantry or regular military. They wouldn't take somebody from the French Foreign Legion that came to the United States and say, "Hey, let me join the Delta Force." No,
sure,
that does give it
agree
validity.
With that. But I don't think it necessarily gives the test itself validity. That's why actual.
Well, I mean, it gives the person that is in the organization validity, which gives the means by which they got into the organization validity.
I think those are two separate things. Otherwise, you wouldn't have. Otherwise, WAIS wouldn't need to be continually updated. Otherwise, people wouldn't have been publishing criticisms of it.
Well, again, this is another problem. The idea that in order for,
I think the scholarly literature is where you have to go to first.
Well, this is another problem. The idea that in order for something to be considered valid or reliable, or that inversely, that if something gets continually updated, right, it is an indication as to its complete reliability or just likely reliability, right? The idea that you need like IQ test updates. This is another thing that you were talking about in relation to Chris Langan. You was like, if there were to be evidence of Chris Langan having a high IQ, he would need to take a test past 2020 or something, or take a relatively new test. Like IQ tests are iPhone updates, and they need to renew it every single time that a new IQ test comes out in order for his IQ score to be valid. I mean, it's a joke.
I don't think that is a joke. I mean,
it is.
IQ tests are refined continually for that very reason. In order
they're
to
refined continually, but just because they're refined continually doesn't mean that your range is incorrect, or rather, it is not reliable. Just because it is not incredibly to the date.
Well, the point is that IQ tests are correlated against the intelligence of your peers at the time that you took it.
Okay.
So that doesn't tell you anything about your intelligence relative to the people you're living with 20 years later.
It does, because the variability isn't all that great. Wait, hang on. Do you think that if you take an IQ test, you take the Stanford Binet in 2008, let's say the WAIS III and in 1999 for instance, let's take Chris's example. Do you think that if you get a 160 IQ range there, that if you take a WAIS V exam, that the range can't be said to be around 160, or that you don't take another IQ exam, that you can't say say that your range is around 160? Why would you not be able to do that?
Partly because intelligence changes over time.
Intelligence doesn't change over time.
Okay, that's, well...
What do you mean? Okay, let's clarify this. What does intelligence changing over time mean? What does that mean?
Because the measures of intelligence that these tests are based on your knowledge, and your knowledge changes.
No?
Your knowledge literally does change. You learn new things. Sometimes you forget things.
You're equivocating between crystallized and fluid intelligence.
No, I'm talking about intelligence. I'm just talking about intelligence. I'm talking about this is what I mean by intelligence.
Well, no, there are two different kinds of intelligence. There's fluid intelligence and there's crystallized intelligence. So a measure of crystallized intelligence, or the knowledge that you speak of increasing knowledge therein, right, would be something like the SAT, right? And the SAT does get revised, and it does get renewed almost every single year. And that would be a measurement of somebody's crystallized knowledge because they have the capacity to study for it. But the IQ tests, they're largely measurements of fluid intelligence. So this largely doesn't change over time because it is pointing to something. It is pointing to something real. It is trying to measure something real, which is the G factor. The G factor doesn't just change over time, right? Because it has a largely genetic component. It has a largely, I think, 60 to 70% hereditary component. So it doesn't really change over time.
60 to 70%. You mean your intelligence level is 60 to 70% inherited?
Something around that. It's at least a majority, like at least 50%, I'd say.
Okay, well, I've certainly not heard that before, but
we can just look it up. I mean, let me see. How much of the G factor is hereditary? Because
the last person I read talking about high level of intelligence being passed down was Edward Dutton.
I don't know who that is.
And the other one. Oh, he's a right-wing racist, of course.
Okay, so yeah, all right. The hereditary component of the G factor, general intelligence, varies with age, but falls within a broad range with estimates typically between 40% and 80%. Research, particularly twin adoption studies, shows that the heritability of G increases from childhood to adulthood. For instance, over meta-analysis reported estimates of around 85% for 18-year-olds and older adults, while other studies suggest it can be as high as 91%. So yeah, it is pretty much largely heritable. So this notion that intelligence doesn't, intelligence evolves over time because of crystallized intelligence is not only an equivocation, it's just false.
Okay, no, I think we're talking about two different things here. You're talking about general cognitive factor, G.
Well, that is intelligence, general intelligence. Yeah, but there's a difference between that and what you talked about, because what you talked about was crystallized intelligence.
I mean,
crystallized intelligence is different.
Okay, look.
Because I agree with you. Crystallized intelligence does change. Absolutely, I would agree with that. Crystallized intelligence absolutely changes, right? But insofar as you're talking about IQ, that isn't incredibly relevant because IQ tests don't measure for crystallized intelligence.
But they are calibrated against the intelligence of your peers at the time that you take the test.
Okay, sure, yeah. But again, this is not about crystallized intelligence. Just because people's crystallized information changes, it doesn't mean that the fluid
okay,
intelligence
but I mean
changes.
that
That's what you said.
would tell us.
I'm just responding to what you said.
That would tell us that this is his intelligence as calibrated by his peers in 1999. What does that tell us about him now?
What it tells us about him now is that at the time he took the WAIS III test and he got a 160 above score on it. Doesn't mean that if you take a WAIS IV test or a WAIS V test, your IQ score is going to drop by like 2 standard deviations. That's just not how it works, right?
Well, I don't know
It's
because
likely going to be around the same range, right? That's why the community is accepted.
I don't know if he would. I don't know if he would. I don't even know the conditions.
So how is this not?
Test.
I think we should move on to the standards of evidence because this is another one of my large contentions. And I just want to tell you now because I am making a video response to this, so you don't feel blindsided. I am making a video response.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I appreciate that. That's okay. Yep.
So I want to talk about. You said something regarding evidence. Firstly, you didn't give an exactly precise definition of evidence because I believe any objective definition of evidence would vindicate this as being evidence of Chris Langan having a high IQ, particularly the ABC News claim. But I want to refer to something in your own standard. You talked about physical documentation. You said that physical documentation would be requisite evidence for you to consider this ABC News. For you to consider that there's evidence of Chris Langan having a high IQ. So I just want to provide this logical argument and respond to it how you will. Okay?
Yep.
So premise 1, if Veritas says physical documentation is requisite evidence for Chris having a high IQ, then it would be entailed that the testimony of the person who proctored the test would be also requisite evidence. Premise 2, Veritas says physical documentation is requisite for Chris having a high IQ. For requisite evidence for Chris having a high IQ. Conclusion, therefore, it would be entailed that the testimony of the person who proctored the test would be requisite evidence of Chris Langan having a high IQ. What would be the counter argument to this, or what would be the rebuttal to this? Because I see this. If you say that,
you mean here's the person who claims to have the requisite evidence of his high IQ, and that is sufficient proxy for the physical evidence. That your basic idea?
Yeah. Because if your standard is if requisite evidence by your standard is physical documentation, which by the way can be fabricated way more easily than a testimony from a third-party source to the point of a neuropsychologist, right? If this satisfies the condition for evidence, then why would it be not the case that the person who is proctoring the test, saying that this person got an incredibly high score on it, not be evidence of that person having a high IQ?
Okay, can you quote the statement of mine in which I talk about in which I use the term physical documentation?
Sure. So I'm gonna find it somewhere here. Hang on, just give me a minute. So what was Langan's score as tested by Novelli? We don't actually know since we have no specific information from Novelli. We have a statement from Novelli that, quote, Chris is the highest individual that I have ever measured in 25 years of doing this, end quote, but no specific score. And we have a claim by McFadden that, quote, the results were literally off the charts. Langan's IQ could not have been measured by the test, end quote. Given this was a formal test, Chris should have received physical documentation of the test results, and you really should be showing the photos of that result, of that report. And
Chris is the one making the claim for a specific score.
Sorry?
I'm entirely happy to accept. The test is claimed that Oh, here's the highest I've ever tested. No problem. That's eyewitness testimony.
That's evidence of Chris Langan having a high IQ.
Oh yeah, I'm prepared to accept it. His statement that he's the highest I've ever scored.
Well, I just want to know if this would satisfy the requisite standard for Chris, it being evidence of Chris Langan having a high IQ, because you've not only said that this is not evidence for.
I don't think so. It's only one. It's only one data point with no investigable evidence.
Sorry.
It's evidence that one person thinks he has a high IQ.
One
certainly
person who proctored the test.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Why
I know.
Hang on. This is the problem, that if you don't have a standard of evidence that is actually that is actually identified through the capacity of a definition, you would have to say it would be fine for you to say that this is not evidence, or that the testimony of this neuropsychologist is not evidence, if you produce some kind of level of doubt of why we should not believe the neuropsychologist. However, if you go by the standard of evidence as demonstrated by almost every single dictionary on the planet, which is additive information, which gives you reason to believe in the truth value of a proposition, and that's kind of the generalized one that I use, additive information that gives reason to believe in the truth value of a proposition, we would have every reason to believe that this is additive information because it's from a third party source, the neuropsychologist who proctored it. He has expertise. We have no reason to believe that he's lying. There's no motive for doubt here. That is additive information that gives reason. Right? It gives reason because he's a neuropsychologist and a third-party source who proctored the test, who gives reason to believe in the truth value of a proposition. The proposition being that there is evidence for Chris Langan having a high IQ, or that Chris Langan has a high IQ. So how could this, by all of these standards of definition of evidence, possibly not be evidence? Where is the motive for doubt? Why are we calling this neuropsychologist into doubt? You would have to demonstrate this.
I've explained. There are two things. One, he delivered the test. And the way he delivered it, he received a result which is the highest he has ever seen. That's fine. And on that basis, he believes Chris has a high IQ.
No. Is this evidence of him having a high IQ or not? Is his testimony evidence? Is it additive information? Firstly, let's establish that. Is it additive information?
It's evidence which I believe needs to be corroborated, because you have to think, well, what tool did he use? Is the tool reliable?
Well, we know the tool. We know the WAIS III test, right? But this is not. We would only hang on.
That's why I said we have to consider the validity of the tool, which is exact. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bothered saying, well, is this tool actually valid? Were the test conditions valid as well?
Well, this is again. This is only necessitated. This is only necessitated if you call into doubt the testimony or the reason why there would be any doubt behind the testimony of the neuropsychologist. So hang on.
It's necessitated if you believe that one statement without corroborating information, which is
without corroborating information. I mean, we have the corroborating information. The corroborating information is that the WAIS III test has been used by neuropsychologists, just like the neuropsychologist in the WAIS III test in the ABC News clip all around the world at the time, which you said that it was considered unreliable by a study that wasn't even published at the time, so it couldn't even have been considered unreliable.
No, I pointed out that the study is citing earlier studies.
Again, and I disprove this. It would be an equivocation. I use the analogy, the high school analogy. Okay, it doesn't make sense.
I don't think that's true, because the conclusion. You're going to have to complain to.
Well, hang on. Let's move again through this point by point. If we had an exam, or if we had a proctor of a physics exam for freshman year, and we had a proctor for a physics exam in let's say the senior year. If these two tests, right, in the freshman year and the senior year, receive the same conclusion, or come to the same conclusion that there's scoring variability on the ends of the people that are proctoring the test, or the teachers that are proctoring the test, right? Are these similar conclusions? There would be similar conclusions, yes?
I'm not sure what you're.
I'm analogizing the entirety of the study to this. I'm analogizing this idea of different research throughout different time to this one, to the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study, right? Because you said that it is supportive of it.
Yeah, instead of an analogy, I would like to see you actually address the data that they presented
Wait, hang on. This is statistical. That would be a statistical addressing of it, not a logical one. In order for me to even have the capacity to give the statistical integrity or the logical integrity of the argument, I would have to actually analyze it logically. Because if it's not logically valid, there's no reason for me to go into the empirical side of it.
Okay, I think you're trying to logic your way away from testing data.
Well, again, that is not a logical rebuttal. We would have to go through the logical deduction of whether this standard is actually valid, and then we can go into the empirical side of it. Because if it's logically invalid, and then we go into the empirical side of it, then the empirical side of it is also devalidated. So we need to get through the logic.
Well, you're going to have to demonstrate to me that what this logical argument, because right now this sounds like
I am demonstrating to it through an analogy, right? That's why I'm asking you a question. So if we have a person in the freshman, let's say in high school, the freshman year, we have a teacher that is proctoring a physics test, and we have also in the senior year, right, another tester proctoring a physics test for a senior student, right? If both of these tests, if the study that is analyzing both of these tests reaches the same conclusion, right? And for the first test and for the second test, the conclusions are similar, that in both of these tests, there is scoring reliability, the variability, my bad. There is scoring variability dependent on the proctor or the person that is proctoring the test. Would it or would it not be the case that the first one is supportive of the conclusion of the second one, that this one is the scoring variability of this is present, or the conclusion of the scoring variability for this particular test is present? Would the first one support that just because they're consistent or because they're similar?
I think it would.
How?
I mean, if you do a test and the scores are seen to differ based on who does the test, and you do the test a few years later, and you find again the scores differ based on who does the test, then I think that the consistency of those results indicates that the results of the test.
It doesn't mean that the first one proves the latter.
I think it's corroborating evidence. I don't think we're talking about proof.
But the tests would be different, right? The tests are different. That's the entire point. The tests are different. If you have somebody in freshman year taking a physics test, and you're taking, and there's somebody in the senior year taking another physics test, right? Right. They're physics test 1 and physics test 2. Okay, because let's say there are scoring variabilities with both of them. Does that mean that the fact that there is scoring variability with physics test 1 means, or it indicates or supports the idea that there must be scoring variability with physics test 2?
Look at the conclusion.
That would be a non sequitur.
I don't see how it's non sequitur. Look at the conclusion that I just posted in chat and see, because they controlled for, they took into account the fact that WAIS R and WAIS III are different. They even said it represents a significant improvement.
Yeah, again, but this is irrelevant. All that this is saying is just regurgitating the conclusion of the test. I know that this is the conclusion of the test, that there's scoring variability with the people that are proctoring the WAIS III test. This is not what is being contested. What is being contested is that previous year's research is supportive of this one. Right? It is an indication towards this one, because without the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study, all that you would have is these researchers that are not supportive of this conclusion. That you said Chris Langan took the IQ test in 1999 and it was considered unreliable at the time, right? By virtue of what, the 1980 studies or the 1990 studies? These can't be supportive of that. The conclusion doesn't follow from the premises. It's a non sequitur.
I said accuracy problems with the WAIS itself, and this is why I don't understand your issue here. I just don't understand your issue. If the WAIS in 1982, an issue is found with the WAIS. In 1983, the same issue is found with the WAIS. In 1990, the same issue is found with the WAIS.
Even if that's true, hang on.
The same issue is found with the WAIS, and you're saying these
that's different than testing for. That's different than the WAIS III test being tested for its scoring variability, right? Because that's the point of the study. It's not about the internal integrity of the WAIS III, the internal integrity of the WAIS III test. It's about the scoring variability. It says that these findings from the study, the Ryan and Schnuckenberg study, were consistent with previous ones. It said it was consistent with previous ones, but you quoted it as if it was supportive of it. The study never said it was supportive. It said it was consistent.
I think that is an equivocation of words.
It is not an equivocation. That is just being precise.
Yeah. I really think.
Hang on, let me try to find it. Hang on.
Okay, well, do you believe they believe that do you believe then that scoring errors occur frequently and detract from the accuracy of WAIS III IQs and indexes?
I don't think that they believe that just because there were scoring issues in 1982 that would be an indication or supportive of the proposition that there would be scoring problems or scoring variability problems with the WAIS III test in 1997. I don't think that they would believe that, because I think they would see the logical errors of that. So this is what it says. The findings of this investigation are consistent with the literature, because they indicate that regardless of one's experience with the Wechsler scale, scoring errors occur frequently and detract from the accuracy of the WAIS III IQs and indexes. So what you're saying is that this is supportive of the idea that there is scoring variability of the WAIS III IQ test. But previous years' research of a study in 1982 can't be supportive of something that didn't even exist. It can't. The means by which the study is conducted in 1982 can't support the means by which a study is conducted in 2003 about something that came out in 1997, when the 1982 study wasn't even about it. It couldn't have been about
the Wechsler scales existed. The Wechsler scales is what's being tested.
This is not even what is being talked about. This is not even what is being talked about. They're just talking about scoring. They're just talking about scoring variability.
One's experience with the Wechsler scales. That's it. The Wechsler scales existed in 1982, 1983, 1990, 1997, 2003. The Wechsler scales.
And they say the findings of this investigation are consistent with the literature. This is the capacity in which you're using the previous. Hang on. This is the capacity in which you're using the previous literature. It is in reinforcement with, because they indicate that regardless of one's experience level with the Wechsler scale, scoring errors occur frequently and detract from the accuracy of the WAIS III IQs and indexes. Okay? This is not, it's about the scoring variability. That's what the entire study is about. This is what you're using it as reinforcement for. This is what you're using the previous research for. It's about scoring variability. It's about when somebody is proctoring the test, they make issues when correcting the test or scoring the test, right? They make errors.
Which is why they say exactly. Which is why they say these improvements had little or no impact on the accuracy of scores produced by the present samples of student and practitioners. The same problem.
Hang on. Say that again. Say that again.
That they said it appears that these improvements had little impact on the accuracy of scores produced by the present sample of students and practitioners. Why? Because, as I said, scoring errors occur frequently and detract from
and you know what? It still occurs frequently. Do you know why? Because that's kind of like the implication of anybody scoring a test, that it has the capacity to, but that has the capacity, that the person that is proctoring the test has the capacity to make errors in correcting or scoring for the test. But this is not even relevant to the proposition that is being made. The proposition that is being made is very simple, right? Are previous years' researches supportive of a research that didn't even exist at the time about something, about a completely different test, just because they share similar conclusions, right? The point that is being talked about is not the WAIS medium, right? It's about the scoring variability of the WAIS III test. So you can't say just because there is scoring variability in the 1982 research, right, that this indicates scoring variability with the WAIS III test in 1997. Because it would be a non sequitur. It wouldn't follow.
Their statement is the issue which was identified previously is still an issue with the Wechsler scales. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, sure. Hang on, that could be the case, and it still wouldn't be the proposition that the study in 1982, just because it has a similar conclusion to a study in 2003, it means it supports that, or the contents of that study supports or is an indication as to the truth value of the apparatus by which the conclusion is reached in 2003. Right? It doesn't logically follow.
It's using the same version.
They're consistent. This is the reason that they're consistent. They're consistent, of course, but it doesn't mean that they're supportive. That's why the study never used the word supportive. The study never used the word supportive. They used the word consistent because it is consistent, but it doesn't mean it is supportive.
I don't see how you're drawing a distinction between there. It's consistent, which is why it is supportive.
I think this is just like kind of a lost point. I think
because they're saying we found the same issue with the Vechsler scales that was found in 1990, 1983.
Sure, but that's again, you're just describing consistency.
Yeah, so that means there's still a problem with the Vechsler scales.
Sure. That could be the case. That could be the case, but that doesn't mean. Hang on, but that doesn't mean that the 1982 study entails a support of the conclusions of the 2003 study.
Okay, I think this is just semantics because I'm not saying.
Well, it is semantics. Of course, it is semantics because there's a delineation between something logically supporting another, and there's a difference between something being consistent with another proposition. Right? Two propositions can be consistent. Right? I can say that I sleep, but I'm not eating. These two are consistent, right?
But that doesn't mean one.
But that doesn't mean one causes the other.
Does not support our. Wait, I don't think they are saying this is consistent, but it does not support our study. I don't think they're saying that. I don't think they are saying this is consistent, but unfortunately, it does not support our study.
Just because it isn't saying that, it doesn't mean that it entails that it's not true, right? Just because it isn't saying that this. I know, but this is consistent, but it is not supportive. Evidence of absence is not absence of evidence.
I know, but you're making a positive claim about what they're saying, and you're saying that they're saying it's consistent, but we don't think it supports our study.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that that's what they said, because it's not what they said. All that they said is it's consistent. The proposition that I'm making is it could be the case that two propositions are consistent. It could totally be the case that I say it is raining today and my shoe is shining. Right? These two are consistent, right? Because they both can be true at the same time. But it doesn't mean that one causes the other, or the one is supportive or reinforcing of one another.
Yeah. So I know, but you're disagreeing with the conclusion they draw from their data.
What do you mean?
Because you're saying that that just because it's consistent doesn't mean that. Sure, look, wait, I've got an online class starting right now. I'm just going to have to leave this for the next 3 hours. Okay.
Okay. So can we continue the conversation in a couple of hours? Is that fine?
Yep. Sure.
Absolutely. It was great talking to you, by the way. It's nice.
No problem. I'm happy to do this. I'm just under a bit of time pressure right now.
Sure, man. No problem. See you later.